welcome. We'll go ahead and start off with just people and places. I'll start off telling you a little bit about me, and then I'll transition to Dr. Lee, who's also co-instructing the course. So my name is Zach Hinkle. I am not a doctor, not anything like that. Just call me Zach. That's what I respond best to. I'll also respond to anything just directed in my general area. But Zach is what I go by. So just to give you a little history, this is where I grew up, Southeast Texas. I've been an undergraduate here at Texas A&M, and now I'm here at Mississippi State. And I've been here for about 3 years now working on my PhD in human-robot interaction. A little bit of history. I started doing human-robot interaction, human-computer interaction research when I was an undergrad back in 2008. Did a lot of search and rescue stuff. This is a robot that I spent several years working with. It's called Survivor Buddy. It's from Texas A&M. I also did some work with drones in search and rescue, and this is kind of HCI stuff as well. So this is an interface that we use to help multiple people use a single drone basically when they're working on a disaster response. And so this interface, we'll get to in just a second, is one that you can use on a tablet or on a computer. We call it Skywriter. And basically what it let people do was to like spotlight certain areas on the live video feed or draw on them. And so it's kind of an interesting project that integrates robots and interfaces, that kind of thing. At Mississippi State, I do a lot of work with these guys. These are social robots, a lot of work with children in these robots. In the STARS lab, it's a social therapeutic robotic systems lab. Most recently, we've spent the past 3 years interviewing children about sensitive topics like bullying. This is where we do forensic interviews with these robots. This is another kind of a cool interface. We either have a human talk to the kids or a robot talk to the kids, and when we do the human, we want them to be kind of as constrained as the robot and not go off script. So we actually have this teleprompter interfacing system that they can get the same responses that the AI that the robot generates would get. So they're basically a human robot. We do lots of fun interface things, controlling that stuff, making sure those studies go well. This is me playing with one of our robots. It basically tracks my face using a sensor, and then this robot taking me and he puffs his cheeks out. Kind of a cool little thing. The other big project that I worked on here as a grad student is Therabot, which is a therapeutic robotic dog meant to help people who are in a situation where maybe they can't have a support animal or emotional support animal. We're looking at robotic solutions for that. But I'll share a lot more with you throughout the semester, just about projects I've worked on or interesting things I've seen. Hopefully that will help us have conversations about HCI and different things about HCI, things that you can use. The main takeaways for me, though, a PhD student here in the STARS lab. If you don't know, that's upstairs on the second floor. You come off the elevator out of the stairs, it's to the right, and basically that hallway, the entire hallway is the STARS lab. It's also my office, Butler 212 is usually where you'll find me. It's possible I could be in 213, 214, or 215. So if you don't find me in the first one, just keep going down the hall. But I usually stay in 212. My email address is on the syllabus. I don't have an office phone. This is my cell phone. If there ever is something that's immediate or urgent, don't hesitate to call or text or anything like that. I doubt that'll come up. Usually email is the best way to reach me. But you're not gonna cause me any trouble if you do call or text. I will have it on silent if I don't want to or whatever. So that's there for you. And this is Dr. Sarah Lee, and I'll let her introduce herself a bit.
Probably know most everybody in here, but Zach is the primary instructor for the class, but because he's a graduate student, this is a split level class that has a graduate portion. We have to have somebody else that works with him on that, so that's what I'm doing. So he's the subject matter expert. But we will be doing a project with FedEx, and most of you know that I used to work there, so I've actually worked on human-computer interaction things at FedEx. So I'm excited to work with them again. I wish they'd reinstate my paycheck while I'm working with them, but that's probably not going to happen. But anyway, so I'm just here really to give Zach some moral support, help him. You know, when he can't be here, I'll fill in for him. You probably won't see me every class meeting, but did you put my contact information by any chance? It's in the syllabus. It's on the syllabus, and so you know if you are needing something and you can't reach him, or maybe you just run into me or whatever, I'm happy to help, and you're welcome to call or email me as well. So, okay, back to you.
So we'll just go through the syllabus, and if you have any questions as we do this, just let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. So just to start off, we just introduced ourselves. Color 103, y'all made it here in this grade because we will have class 12:30 to 1:45. That'll be PM and not AM. So I will correct that and upload it. So that's the one I noticed when I was sitting here. But also, if you see anything strange in here, just let me know and make sure that get it fixed up for you. This is the course description. It's probably in the catalog. Basically, we're going to look at interfaces. We're going to design interfaces. We're going to do all of the things you might imagine and probably then some. And we'll talk about that today a little bit, kind of what the course includes and what we'll work on. We're using Canvas. You can get to Canvas, just canvas.msstate.edu. The only thing up there right now is a syllabus. Once the class ends today, there will be a quiz, which is a survey, to get some information about you guys and some of your preferences for the project and things like that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the course. In terms of textbooks, not requiring any specific textbook. If you'd like a textbook that covers the content that we're going to cover, this book, Interaction Design, is a good one. It's available for a decent price, and it's also on the internet. So if you want a book to look at that kind of stuff, that's a good one to have. There's nothing required. We may read a couple of chapters of one of Don Norman's books, but I'll get that on e-reserve from the library, so you won't have to buy that or anything. It'll be there provided for you. Everything else will be in the slides. If we read or look at like conference papers or articles from somewhere else, I'll have them uploaded either through the e-reserve or just put on Canvas. And in terms of material for exams and quizzes and things like that, I'll be sure to give you a very clear outline of what will be covered, and you'll have a time to ask questions and things, just in case, so you have reference material, basically. Attendance, please come to class. I'll take roll first couple of times just to try to get to know people. But after that, if you're not going to be here, please let me know. Especially if it's on a day that we're going to have an exam or something like that. If you can let me know ahead of time, a week ahead of time is good usually. We can make arrangements, it's no problem. The main thing is just to communicate, let me know. I understand also, if you get sick or you have a family emergency, I'm not always the first thing on your mind. So whenever you get a chance, as soon as you can, let me know about that. In general, you'll be working in teams this semester. So try to treat your team members the same way. Basically just communicate with everybody and let them know. It's always better to know sooner that somebody's not going to be there or be able to do something than just to not hear from them at all. So talk a little bit about grading in this course. First of all, I want to say this course is not meant to be a course that is going to try to, prevent you from getting that A or something. I think it's completely conceivable you all walk out of here with an A. This material is fun material, it's interesting material. If you're here in class and participating, doing those kinds of things, I think you will find that it's intuitive and it's enjoyable, and it's not going to be a huge stress on you to do well in this course. That being said, the majority of your grade will come from the semester through project. And so on the next portion of the syllabus, you'll see a breakdown of how that works. And there'll be a variety of checkpoints throughout the semester just to keep us on schedule and everything. In general, in past sections of this course, they've been taught by Dr. Cindy Bethel, who's my advisor. Projects have gone very well. They've been a lot of fun. Everyone pretty much has, made an A on the project portion of the course, and most people make an A in this course in general. Exams. We're going to do 3 exams. Don't let that worry you too much. The exams are going to be a time where you come in class, I'll give you the exam, and it's going to be things like, here's kind of this problem, what principles can you use from what we learned, to draw out an interface or propose a solution or 2 different things, or you might have some of the usability characteristics. It's straightforward stuff, nothing meant to trick you. I'm also not one to ask you to memorize a lot of arbitrary things like dates or very specific names, that kind of thing. If we do anything that involves a formula, which literally I think there's 2 formulas in this entire course, I'll provide that for you to do the calculation. It's not about memorization in here, it's about being able to find resources, access those resources, and apply them. Quizzes. Quizzes tend to work better more frequently. So it's better if we can, about once a week, do a quiz. Again, quizzes will be really straightforward. They'll be quick. We'll come in, we'll do them about once a week, except for weeks where we don't have presentations. And we'll do the quizzes, we'll go over the answers. You should be fine. It'll be what we talked about in the class before that, just to keep us up to date on things. I've experienced both approaches where you don't have kind of frequent quizzes or you have very frequent ones. And personally, I find the frequent ones to work well in a course like this. And there's actually quite a bit of research that shows that kind of that testing frequently is helpful. So we'll do that. Also, we'll drop the 2 as low quizzes. And on quizzes and exams, definitely if there are items that you think, maybe the question is vague or you thought of it a different way or everyone has trouble with it, I'm very flexible, very willing to discuss it and to help out with things like that. I'm definitely here to help you and be a resource, not to allocate points. Assignments, we'll do 4 to 6 assignments. These will all be really fun. So some of the first ones we'll do will be like sketching out interfaces and things like that. It's a chance for you to be creative, to think about the concepts that have been presented, and to kind of do your own work on that. We'll also do some assignments like, and you're welcome to do this anytime, but we'll have an assignment on it, like an example of a bad interface or a horrible experience you have in the world, which I feel like happens all the time to me, and I'll usually capture that if I can. Or a good experience. Sometimes there are these really nice experiences you have that you didn't expect from something. And so we want to be able to share that with the class, talk about it, and it'll fit in with the stuff that we're talking about in the class, I'm sure. If you're a graduate student, for the graduate student portion of the class, we'll ask you to do two-page summaries of journal articles or conference papers, and I'll provide you with resources for kind of the main conferences for human-computer interaction, and then some of the journals for human-computer interaction. You're also welcome to find things that interest you, whether it be in a technical journal or a trade journal or something like that. And I'll give you examples from others how to do this. It's also something that's really enjoyable. It's cool to see what kind of the current stuff is in HCI, because HCI tends to be a field, like the research side of it, where people just do crazy things. And so like HCI conferences are the best. In my opinion. But that will be the graduate student portion. Graduate students, your project is worth 40%, and then another 10% comes from that. And I can promise you, as long as you do both of them and don't plagiarize, you will get that 10%. The grading scale is really straightforward in this course, probably what you have in all the other courses. 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90, and so on. We'll have the 3 exams that we do, and those will be evenly spaced throughout the semester. I'll get those up on the calendar on Canvas so that if you do have a scheduling conflict or something, you can let me know. And then for the final exam period that we have, that'll be when you do your final presentations to our industry partner FedEx on your projects. So we'll spend that class period doing that. I should also note your exams will not necessarily be cumulative or anything like that. Certainly they'll build, there will be things that you'll know on the second one, or on the first one, but they'll each focus on the new things that we covered. So to talk a little bit about the semester project, and I'll give a handout a little bit later. It'll be next week. So right now, tentatively on the schedule on Tuesday of next week, FedEx will be here, and they'll be here to describe the projects that they are proposing and kind of the needs they have, and you'll be able to ask them questions and hear about the projects, things like that. But just to give you an overview of how this will work, basically, FedEx will come and they'll have a set of problems. We'll organize into groups, usually no more than 5 people per group, usually 3 to 5, something like that. And you'll all kind of get to say what preferences you have in terms of the projects that they offer, and it'll either be 2 or 3. So there will be groups working on the same project, which is really interesting because you'll come up with different things for the same problem. Once they've given you all of that material, and I should say you'll get a chance to input, like if you know people in the class and you guys want to be in a group together and you already know that, you'll be able to fill that in on the survey that goes out today, and that way that helps me put people together who really want to be in a group. Otherwise, I'll look at some of the other stuff that you put in, kind of what your background is, what your interests are, and try to make groups of people that will fit together well to do the projects. But once you have the project info, the first thing we'll do some early design sketches. And so this is where you'll literally draw out, or you can do mock-ups in illustration software if you want, of some of your ideas for these things. And then we'll do some prototypes that are a little more higher fidelity. So basically we're going to go from really low fidelity, like sketching and drawing, up to things that are more, maybe, I don't know, it could even be PowerPoint with shapes and stuff to mimic an interface. And after we kind of do those first 2 things, we'll talk about it as a class. We'll kind of have a chance for each group to share a few of theirs. Because there's a lot of you, when we do days of presentation, we have to be really careful about timing. Otherwise, we'll have to spend like 4 class periods on that. So we'll talk more about that when it's time for it. Then your next checkpoint will be kind of the full design revision one, and that'll basically be, you'll have this complete interface that solves everything that you think they need for the problem. And then we'll take a chance to look at that. You'll be able to get some feedback. You'll iterate on that and get a revision 2. Once you have revision 2, then you'll get to do kind of a fun process, and we'll learn all about this, is you'll get to try it out with some users. Basically, you'll need to recruit some friends, family members, whoever, to use the interface and to answer. You'll design a survey, they'll give you feedback on it, and then you'll take that feedback and you'll come up with your final revision and presentation. Just a quick survey. How many of you have experience programming in some language? So that's majority of pretty much everyone. Okay. If you don't worry. I want to emphasize this class is about human-computer interaction. It's about user interfaces. It's not about databases or backends or APIs or anything like that. You're more than welcome to integrate those things into your projects, and I think a lot of you will want to, just to make them look nice and have the prototypes look nice. But the general idea with the projects is your contribution is a nice interface that's designed well, that follows good HCI principles, that's useful to FedEx. And what they usually do is they take your final product and then they give it to their team in-house. And you'll hear from these people that are going to take your interface throughout the semester. And they'll connect your interface to their systems when they actually use it. And that's nice because there are a lot of things we can't do. FedEx isn't going to give us access to their central authentication system. Okay? We're not going to be able to actually pull their employee data. And they have to do things like review our code, make sure it works in their environments, that kind of thing. So our focus is on the interfaces. That said, there's a small documentation component to your project, which is basically you'll be expected to provide them with a write-up of like, this is how we design this, whether it's a web interface or a C# app or whatever it might be. This is how you install it. This is how you modify things like that. Oops, I skipped over a little bit. Just this little bit down here. When you're in your teams, I hope that everything goes wonderfully for you and everyone contributes equally and it's a pleasant process. But sometimes there are a few bumps along the road. Don't hesitate to ask one of us if we can help you, if we can help people find what it is that they're going to thrive at doing in the project. And again, sooner is better with stuff like that. That being said, you'll get a chance to do a little bit of kind of evaluating yourself and others on the team. And if you have a problem, like a team member has just gone missing or something, that'll help me go find them for you and bring them back, hopefully. All of that said,
I just want to say don't wait till the end of the semester to say, Brooke didn't do anything,
yes.
Or tell us earlier, because there could be something going on that we can help that person with and help them get re-engaged. Because life happens and things happen.
Yes, definitely so. And if everybody communicates, it's just so much easier. So if someone does just kind of run away, or like if you just run away and don't help with the project, that will impact your grade. I don't expect any of you to just run away and not help with the project.
I might. I've been thinking about it this week. It's a crazy week.
It's only Tuesday. Makeup policy. In general, just let me know in advance if you have a planned absence, and we will make sure that you can make up that quiz or exam or whatever it is you need to do. If it's unplanned and it's excused as defined by university policy, and that's things like illness or family emergency, stuff like that, obviously we'll work with you to get that fixed too. Just let us know as soon as you can. All communication will be through Mississippi State email accounts and through Canvas. Canvas is still a little bit new, so we may encounter a few bumps on that, hopefully not. It seems to be pretty nice from what I've used of it so far. But I'll put announcements on there, things like that. I'll also announce them in class, obviously. This is the honor code. You're all familiar with the honor code, so we will be doing group work and collaboration in here. What's important with a lot of that and with the UI stuff is if you use a library, if you use someone else's work from GitHub and build on that, anything like that, just be sure to attribute that properly. If you're writing a paper or doing an assignment, always cite your sources, no plagiarism on any of that, and we'll be fine in that area. A couple of things every syllabus has. Title IX, there's contact information if there are Title IX issues. feel free, if there's something you're comfortable talking to me about that's a problem in the course, or talking to Dr. Lee about, come to us. We will point you in the right direction. We'll help you as best we can. If you're not comfortable talking to us, there are always another layer of people that you can talk to. Please do that. It's important that we have an environment and an atmosphere where everybody feels comfortable, where everybody's treated with respect, and they don't feel threatened. In relation to that, you might not expect this, but at least a little bit later in the semester, we'll talk about some of HCI stuff that may be some sensitive topics. We'll talk about HCI in society and culture. We'll have things where we touch on religion, where we touch on sexuality, where we touch on stuff like that, and how HCI relates to that. I really look forward to having those discussions, and spirited discussions are great and welcome. When we have them, just remember everybody comes from a different viewpoint, treat people with respect, and that'll be good. But that'll be a little bit later in the course. In general, the basic stuff at the beginning does not tend to be basic. University services, so if you need academic accommodations, please let one of us know to make sure that we've got that. And you can always contact support services. We also have the counseling services if you ever need them. It's a great place, a great resource, and their contact.
Yeah, for accommodations, you do have to work through the Office of Student Support Services. So if you've been delaying doing that and feel like that you need to, I encourage you to go ahead and do that.
And so that wraps up the syllabus. Are there any questions about anything covered?
Is it cooler in here now? It feels better to me.
It feels way better to me.
So if I'm not here, somebody please turn the air on if it's hot in here.
All right, so there's no questions. We're going to get started with human-computer interaction, and we'll kind of start with what is it? Probably do about 30 minutes today. We'll get done a little bit early. So, human-computer interaction. Oh, I should let you know, I will put these slides on Canvas as soon as I get done here, which I have office hours right after this class if you need anything to. I'll get them up there for you. A lot of my slides are more visual. They don't have a lot of text on them, except when they are about key concepts and things that we'll need for exams or quizzes or stuff like that. When I post them to Canvas, I will post the version with any presenter notes, because sometimes I do put my references and my talking points in the presenter notes, and that way you'll have them if you need to review them. So, human-computer interaction seems to be very straightforward. You've got humans and you've got a computer. But I would suggest to you that it is not that simple, and I'll start by presenting humans to you. This is courtesy of a website called cutoutlife.com, which I found this morning, which I thought was really cool because it has cutouts of people that you can use allegedly royalty-free. So, but the point here is that humans are not an easy thing to necessarily define, and certainly not the things they do, the places they come from, the way they're feeling, and their goals, the experiences they've had using technology, that kind of thing. It's not all that straightforward. I'd also argue that computers aren't that straightforward anymore, because we used to be able to think of either a screen or a keyboard, something like that. But now we kind of have a wide spectrum of devices that people interact with on a regular basis. And I just chose some that are pretty popular. As a side note, my parents got a smart dishwasher over Christmas break. I think it's quite possibly the worst interface I've ever seen. It has just like a segmented display, and you somehow have to get Wi-Fi to it. It's a whole thing. But computers, where most people spend most of their time right now, is here with their mobile devices. And increasingly, we start to see things where people are here with these smart home kind of devices, or these fitness tracking devices. So things have changed a lot since the beginning of when the field of HCI kind of emerged. And HCI is a field that is not, it's certainly not computer science's field. Um, Computer science doesn't own it solely. Computer science is a huge part of it because of, the fact that we need programming and we need hardware and we need that stuff. But there's a lot of involvement from psychology, from sociology, from people that would think of themselves as cognitive scientists or human factors. And so all of these fields are concerned with how people use devices, how they use software. And human-computer interaction is a field that merges all of those disciplines together. So a lot of the people that I see at conferences or that I work with or talk with, they are psychologists, they're people in communications, some of them are computer scientists, but it's a pretty even division. So we will spend some time in this course, the first part of this course, talking about people and how they perceive things and cognition and some aspects of cognition that are really important in terms of designing interfaces or devices, that kind of thing. And we'll also spend time talking about all of these different interfaces that have shown up. And obviously there are ones that I've not included here that exist and that people interact with. For years and years, when I was young, a mouse and a keyboard was the way to go. Before that, a keyboard was mostly the way to go. But now, touch is a lot of what people are doing is on a device where touch is the primary input. And people at home are spending more time using natural language as their primary way of interacting with these devices. And then, of course, we've also got really interesting things like VR or this Microsoft HoloLens or augmented reality, things that haven't necessarily taken off in that huge way that the smartphone took off 10 years ago or whenever, but that are on their way. And each of these requires something different from us when we're talking about designing these interfaces and these things that people interact with. Another aspect that's kind of represented on this slide is the pervasiveness of computing devices. It used to be that you might have a computer at your place of business or your university. You go there, you log in on a terminal, you use it, you go home, you're done. After that, it was kind of like maybe you had a computer at home, a desktop or something. But now, pretty much everyone has a smartphone in their pocket. They have a fitness tracker or a smartwatch or something around their wrist. They're relying on these technologies. I threw a garden now. So it's become essential and it's become pervasive. This changes things a little bit because not only do we have all of these devices everywhere now, but people are using multiple at a time. Okay, they're in the same room with each other. You've got Apple's Assistant in your pocket and Amazon's Assistant listening at the same time. You can get a Google Home and an Amazon device to talk to each other if you're clever about it. And I've learned to avoid those keywords for those devices when I speak, so that's why I call them Amazon devices or whatever. But things like that are really interesting, and so we see really interesting problems emerge there. In addition to computers, there's some other things. They're not really computers, so I'm just going to call them machines. They all have computers in them, and people can debate back and forth if they belong in the field of human-computer interaction or not, but spoiler alert, they do. Because if you go to a human-computer interaction conference or you read any literature, you're going to find some of these things. You've got some systems that we don't always think about, like industrial systems, the CNC machine. It has an interface. It has, software that goes with it. This is just a 3D printer that's becoming really popular. It also has an interface on it. It also has software that goes with it in a workflow. These are kind of things that are emerging in the category of robots, and these are social or home robots. This is one that we use in our research. It can run around in the environment. This is a telepresence robot. It's an iPad on a stick, but it's different because now all of a sudden this remote person can move through the environment and sense things. Um, a lot of interesting and unique concerns come up when you give, a computer this physical embodiment and the ability to move around its environment. And it's definitely within the realm of human-computer interaction. So I'll refer to it a lot of times as human-machine interaction. And it's the same as human-computer interaction, but I just want to be inclusive of all of those devices because it's part of this field, and the stuff we learn in here will apply to all of those things. In fact, we'll start with principles of design that don't even involve electronics or computers. And we'll talk about things like affordances and just basic design principles, and then we'll start to transfer those down. So a little bit about what we'll focus on. So I've got a lot of text on the screen. I'm just going to kind of go bullet by bullet and tell you about it, but I want to have the list to you. We're going to start with human perception and cognition. And what that's going to be is we'll spend probably 2 to 3 classes kind of doing a crash course of what you would get if you took cognitive psychology or a course like sensation perception out of the psych department. Just a quick survey. Has anybody taken a psychology course? Okay, so what have you guys taken? Intro to psych?
Has anybody taken any advanced psychology courses? No.
Intro will give you some relevant things. We'll touch on, to start with, from psychology, sensation perception, the cognition stuff, which your intro course probably touched a few things about that. Things about working memory, things about people perceive things like in groups or segmented, which all relates to designing interfaces and that kind of thing. But we'll also talk about social psychology findings. A lot of the systems that are built today, and even though you won't be adding a social networking feature to your FedEx project, at least I don't think, I haven't seen the projects yet, so maybe. But even though you won't be, at least today, a lot of computer interfaces involve a social component. A lot of people respond to computer interfaces and to machines more generally in a social way. And that's something that's really interesting. In my field, human-robot interaction, that's, at least for social robotics, that's the whole point, is people will treat this machine as if it's another person. And it's really, there are some quite fascinating findings way early in the history of psychology. There's a study, and I'm sure some of you have heard of it, where basically they brought people into a room and they had like a laser pointer. And it was just kind of moving around on the wall in a random way. And then they added a few more shapes or something. And then they asked people what was happening. And it was totally random. But people came up with these wonderful stories about how, this dot didn't like the square and it was trying to get away from it. And they describe all of these social things to it. And so believe it or not, a lot of the principles from social psychology, from cognitive psychology, are really helpful when you design interfaces for people on a computer. And so we'll spend some time talking about that, about human social behaviors, about emotions, and how that works in with designing interfaces and designing systems. The other huge portion about HCI, or working as someone who's applying HCI out in the world, is understanding user needs and understanding what the problem is, understanding where technology can be helpful. So way back when I was an undergrad, the first HCI class I ever took, we spent probably half a semester doing ethnographies. And so for that, we went and we just picked something that we thought was interesting, and we got permission from whoever it was to go just kind of sit and observe whatever it was they did. Some people went and, went to a place where a lot of senior citizens played bingo on like a Tuesday night or something, and played bingo with them. And so like at the end, they came up with an app or something that would help them play bingo more efficiently or solve some of their problems. I spent time in the basically the ITS department, one of the ITS departments at Texas A&M, watching their process of responding to problems in classrooms and seeing where there were things that could be improved, what they needed, trying to understand it. And so for your projects, you'll get a lot of information directly from FedEx. They'll give you requirements. They'll talk about their process, and you'll get a chance to ask them questions to clarify things. You won't get a chance to go there and to actually see a lot of these things in action, but you'll get the next best thing. But we'll talk about, when we get to that part of the course, how you can do that. What are the different ways to go in and understand an environment, understand what users need, kind of also meeting users where they are in terms of the skills they're going to have or the past experiences they have, and how will you help them learn to use the interface that they're going to need to use. Also, just kind of direct observation can give you some insights that you might not have thought of. So I worked in search and rescue for a long time with HCI kind of stuff. People in search and rescue can't really use capacitive touchscreens very well because they're usually wearing gloves that make their fingers a lot larger. They can't target tiny things. They're usually in direct sunlight, so a lot of the displays that we have don't do a great job. They usually don't have a connection to a cloud or anything like that, and if they do, they're prioritizing other traffic on it, and so you need to be really careful about stuff like that. So things like that you might not think of, and pretty much any industry or any domain that you go into, you're going to find stuff like that. It's not going to jump out at you immediately, and even if you sit down and talk to someone in that domain, they might not think to tell you that, because for them it's just their everyday job, and that's how things work. So that's really a huge part of HCI, is just being a good observer when you're designing for a problem. So on a more practical note, we will talk about interfaces, techniques for making interfaces, basic principles of design. These are things that have been around for a long time, things that are useful. They are probably things that you take some of them for granted. We all kind of know a good interface or a good experience when we see it or use it. We can't always necessarily say why. And we all know a bad one when we experience it. And usually we can say more about why anyways. But there are a lot of just basic principles and techniques. There's no like algorithm or recipe for a lot of this though. And while it's not, I guess, purely art, there is a part of it that is definitely art. It's definitely a result of trying something and seeing if it works, and seeing where it doesn't work, and then trying something else. You see this pretty much everywhere. You won't notice it so much, but anybody who runs like a big service like Netflix or Google or anyone like that, they're constantly testing different versions of their site. Google will test 127 different shades of yellow on their page by giving random users a different shade and see if that affects any of the things they measure. And that's the kind of thing that's really common in industry. So we'll spend some time talking about that. I don't have any real industry experience. I have a lot of research experience. Dr. Lee has some real industry experience. Can definitely help us when we get there.
Okay.
And I'll try to share with you things that I have learned from working with people in industry. But I expect a lot of you will go out into industry once you get your degrees and work on actual products that thousands or millions of people are going to be using. And so testing and feedback is a huge part of that. Once we do these basic techniques, we'll talk about sketching, prototyping, refining, and then we'll look at practical tools and methods. The really cool thing about HCI is that there are a ton of free tools and new tools constantly being made available for prototyping things, for designing things, for making things look a certain way. We'll also spend time looking. So if you have a company like, for instance, Apple, okay, they have iOS on their iPads and their iPhones and that kind of thing. They have really detailed guidelines on how they want things designed for that. And they have huge teams of people that sit around and come up with these very detailed standards. Google has the same thing. They have material design standards. We'll look at some of those industry things that are publicly available, just so you can get a sense of that, so that you can think about applying it to your projects. Certainly you'll find, working with FedEx, they have a set of branding standards. That's things like colors and fonts and how logos should be spaced.
We have that at Mississippi
So I
State
was
too.
going to say, yeah, we have that
Yeah.
here too. And so a lot of people don't ever look at it because you can find violations all the time.
I know.
But yeah, you definitely should search that when you get a chance.
Yeah, on Mississippi, on msstate.edu, I think if you just search for logos, it'll bring you to that page.
Yeah.
And it shows different logo. You can look for logos for the university, for different colleges and or majors, and then the colors. If you want to do something in maroon, what color of maroon it's supposed to be. So
yeah, you get those exact hex values and the Pantone name, everything, and it's really nice. You've got all the fonts and everything, all kinds of stuff.
it's more seriously enforced in a for-profit business like FedEx. Yeah, I mean you can get in big trouble by using the wrong logo or using their logo without permission if you don't work for them. So.
Yeah, I once was at an AI conference and I had a poster I was presenting. Microsoft Research had funded part of my work, and I had their logo on it. And they had changed their logo, I think, like that week or something, and I'd already printed it. And they had just made the font like a little bit thinner. And one of the VPs of research happened to be there, came up to me and told me that was wrong. And so
They take it seriously.
Yeah. So that was it's something that matters. And you certainly know why. We want things to be consistent. We've all been on a website, and all too often a Mississippi State website, where you click on a link and all of a sudden you're on a version of the page that was, the design from 4 years ago instead of the new one because someone didn't.
Or 10 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, but the CSE site looks better, right? I mean,
It doesn't.
still needs some work, but it looks better than it did 5 years ago. Which is about how long it took to get it changed.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And so that, again, that'll be part of your project's documenting things, right? Because when you're someone like the size of FedEx and you decide to make a change on branding or something, you've got to know where it's all at and what's linked to what. Otherwise, you don't have that.
It's huge.
We'll talk about evaluating designs. And so we'll kind of do a crash course basically in research methods and statistics, give you just enough to kind of know how do I test out my interfaces, my systems with groups of people, how do I interpret that data and use it to make changes. And that's something that's real big in research. I'll try to put some research topics throughout the course that aren't necessarily things you could directly apply today in industry, but that will be useful to you and will definitely be interesting. And we'll learn about presenting and documenting designs, obviously, and that'll be critical to your projects. As we go through this, we'll talk about current research. We will look at kind of the history of HCI and kind of how this field emerged and what groups are involved, where it's headed, how, and I have HMI here as well, how that's blended together, kind of what's going on there. We'll talk about some of the broader things, some of the societal implications. So it's definitely the case that the systems we build matter a lot. If anybody's, read a headline about Russia meddling in an election or something like that through social media, regardless of how you feel about that, that wouldn't even be a potential if that platform didn't exist. And so now you've got the people at Facebook who manage that platform. This is something they've got to think about now. How does the product that they're designing interact with larger societal constructs like elections and politics? And so that's part of HCI. It's not, aligning things and choosing a font, but it's part of it. And so we'll spend time on that. We'll talk about that. So some of our goals that we'll have. So basically, we want to understand humans and how they relate to machines. We might throw in a little bit of not just humans, but things that humans care about, like their pets and stuff like that, because that's actually an area that's emerging. If you go like on Amazon and click on Launchpad or something, you'll see all of these cool little things that like let you Skype with your pet, while you're away, and like dispense them a treat remotely and stuff. And so that's kind of interesting because in the field of robotics where I work, there's always been this kind of humorous thing of how animals interact with robots. So like people put Roomba vacuum cleaners in their homes, and you'll get like the cat that likes to ride on it, or my parents have a little Shih Tzu dog, and he feels that he must supervise the Roomba wherever it goes, so he walks behind it very proudly, kind of growling the entire time until it parks back in its dock. So we'll include some stuff like that, stuff that's interesting and fun that's not necessarily human, but it's definitely things that humans care about and things that are part of these interactions. We'll learn what the most common and best techniques are for designing things. This changes from time to time. You can certainly look over the span of 5 or 10 years and see huge changes in what user interfaces look like. And some of it's just style changes, some of it's a trend. So 5 years ago, Apple's Notes application had a very skeuomorphic design where they had like the look of crinkled notebook paper behind it. And now it's just like a flat design. Everything looks that way. And is there really a reason or not? I don't know. But it definitely comes in trends. And you can see it across all kinds of platforms. Kind of today, a lot of websites look like a Bootstrap template, which Bootstrap is, if you don't know, it's a library that styles websites that's open source and it's made by Twitter. And so once they published that framework, it was really easy for everyone to kind of absorb that style. And so it kind of just spreads out. So we'll talk about some of those trends, but we'll spend most of our time focused on principles that are independent of the trends that are here today and maybe gone. So we'll learn to use modern tools to design systems. For your projects, you're going to be free to use whatever you want. When we get the requirements for your projects, you'll know more about if it's something that FedEx is really like looking for a mobile solution, like it's going to be a mobile interface, it's going to be handheld, or will it also have a desktop or a tablet presence? A lot of times in past iterations of this course, groups have designed interfaces for kind of all of those devices, just to show how it would translate between them. So we'll learn how to use the tools that are associated with that. In general, in this course, people find that it's useful to design web applications because modern web design is to a point where we can make it very responsive to whatever device it's on. We don't have to worry about operating systems. For the most part, the modern browsers, whether that's Chrome, Firefox, or on Apple's devices, Safari, they all support everything pretty well. And it looks the same. It's pretty consistent across devices. And so there's huge benefit to choosing to take a web-based approach to designing interfaces. I know personally in our research lab, we do all of our interfaces using web technologies, so HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Everything's done that way, and that's because we don't always know if we're going to be using an Android tablet, or it's just going to be somebody's iPhone, or it's a laptop. But using that, we know it'll run all of those devices. It's also really nice because it's easy whenever you want to push it out to somebody remotely. You can just put it on a server or wherever, and they can access it. So I encourage you to think about that. If it's something that you're definitely opposed to, you don't want to learn web technologies, you love some other framework or something, you can do that. There's no problem with that. I'm certainly will be able to help you a lot more from a technical side with a lot of the web technologies. I can definitely help you with the other stuff, but it's not something that I do day to day. I keep up with the web stuff, and if you guys get interested once you're started on your projects, I'm happy to do like a workshop or something outside of class time, just to show you the basics of that, to show you how to get started. I'll also spend some time in class with some of these tools, just demoing them and just showing you different tools you can use so that there's a real practical side, and so that you're not just kind of out there lost, because it's a huge landscape of tools and choices that you can make. But there are definitely things that are really powerful and will let you make some great designs. The other huge part of this course, of course, is working with others in the class and with the people at FedEx who kind of the customer to deliver a solution that works. And so that will be the back and forth that we do between them, the back and forth among ourselves, the testing with users, all to come to a final design that's something that you can see a nice progression and evolution of, that you can see the different techniques that you've used. And hopefully it'll be something that you can put on your resume or your CV. And FedEx is usually pretty agreeable about letting you, say I worked on a project with them or in coordination with them. They'll give you the exact language you can use on that. And that looks great when you go out applying for a job. And it's also nice because it's a practical experience. It's something that will let you know if this is something that you really would be interested in, going into a position or going to graduate school or another program that's focused on this kind of thing once you've done one of these projects. So that's a majority of what I have today for you. Do you have any questions, concerns, or anything before we go? I'll go ahead and I'll try to give you at the end of each course, each meeting we have, I'll give you some action items. So we have the HCI welcome survey that will show up on Canvas in about 35 minutes. You'll be able to get it. And so if you guys can get that done by Friday at midnight, that would be really helpful to me. I'll have some questions on it, just asking about you, your past experiences and stuff. Feel free to give me as much or as little information as you want. Will not affect grading or anything. This is just a participation thing. Let me know if you have a group you want to work with. I'll be putting the FedEx groups together over the weekend. So it's really great if you can please meet this deadline and get it in by Friday night. That way I can get those groups together for Tuesday, the next Tuesday when FedEx is here. So we'll meet again on Thursday. And what we'll look at then is we will go through kind of a history of HCI, some of the really pivotal moments of HCI, some of the names of the researchers and the people that have really pushed the field forward, some really interesting things. And then we'll spend some time doing some sketching, talking about prototyping tools, that kind of thing. So that is everything I have for you. I'll get these slides up there too. And if there are no questions, you're good to go.